Hello everybody, we're here to celebrate the best teachers and we are looking at the NGen Teachers Award for the best lesson, and I have with me here Philia Mahlo, who's from Limpopo, and she has won the My Best Teacher Award for a grade 10 lesson. Philia, what were the problems that you saw that you were trying to counter in the lesson that you developed?
Basically following instructions. I realized in my teaching that students fail not because they do not know the answers, but because at times they disregard instructions.
Now, were these written instructions or were they verbal?
Both verbal and written out.
Right. So you were looking at more than one learning outcome for your lesson.
Yes.
Right. And so what did you prepare? What did you plan?
I just planned simple, easy to follow instructions. The written instructions expected them to do things in a particular way, and the spoken instructions were telling them how and where to write those instructions.
Right, can you give us some examples of the instructions that you gave?
For example, I'd say use the middle part of your book and only use the left-hand side for the exercise.
And was that a verbal instruction that you gave?
That was a verbal instruction.
Right. And then, so they turned to the middle parts, and then was it also verbal again when they were told to write? Were they told to write or draw?
They were expected to draw, they were expected to write, they were expected to underline in a particular manner. For example, I would say redraw the lines on your page in pencil.
Right.
And some would use pen instead. And that to me would be an indication that listening is a problem.
Once you got your results and you correlated your results, what did you then do with it?
I told them it made me it helped me in letting them exactly what they should focus more on. And also it made me realize also that it could be a problem of forgetfulness or maybe just not taking the work seriously. So it also helped me advise them on how to overcome such barriers. For example, if somebody is forgetful or just doesn't take things seriously, in answering their questions, maybe on their question paper they could carry a highlighter and highlight all the keywords or maybe the important instructions that they would later look at in completing their exam paper.
And when you were advising them, were you showing them how they could maybe use these techniques in other subjects or just in English?
Basically it's for everyday life, because even we're hoping after completing school they would go and maybe be involved in contracts or a lot of other things. So if they do not have the skill of reading through instructions or maybe following instructions, it might mislead them. They might end up doing things they were not supposed to do. So it's basically a lifelong skill, not just for school.
And you felt it was a good lesson. What made you feel that it was a good lesson?
Because it's something that I do at the beginning of each year. So it makes me train them further because they get used to that pace, and they also get used to adhering to instructions. They wouldn't just get on and start working on the exam, on the questions. They first look at the instructions. They expect every task to come with instructions.
So have you had feedback from the learners? Did they say, wow, it was an eye-opener, or thank you, ma'am, or any kind of feedback from them?
I got mixed responses. Some were annoyed that it was something done without their knowledge. Some were very happy that it was an eye-opener, that it made them realize the importance of following instructions all the time.
So it was a wake-up call.
It was definitely a wake-up call.
Do you find the numbers are a problem when you're dealing with listening and that oral component in grade 10, the speaking and the reading?
Especially in teaching English, I learned that sticking to one language helps, and also making our learners realize that during an English class you cannot speak any other language, no matter whether we're multicultural or anything. We should stick to one language, whether it's in asking for permission to do something or maybe just talking even to your neighbor, so they always know that.
And when you say you don't allow them to go into vernacular, surely sometimes in an English class it's quite useful. For example, this morning I had a student who didn't know what a bat was in Zulu, and I hadn't brought my Zulu dictionary. So I said, I know what a dog is, and I know a snake, and I know a bird, but I don't know a bat. Do you not find it useful to use vernacular, for example, with vocabulary, and then pull it back into English?
It does help, and in most cases you'd find that the students, I learned that the students actually know these things. They just, as they interact with each other, they get to, one would correct them and not say, no, we don't say it this way, we say it that way. Normally, they're the ones that are coming up with all these concepts and even defining them themselves.
So that really helps.
It helps a lot. Even though at times mother tongue interference happens.
Yes,
but
in the
mostly
grammar.
it's minimal. Yes.
Philia, what other oral lessons do you do? Do you do reading? Do you prepared speeches, unprepared speeches? What else do you do?
Yes, I offer several lessons. And also at my school, every Thursday we have a public speaking session.
Oh, nice.
Yes. At assembly, we give them about 10 minutes after a scripture. Then they come up, they create their own speeches. Then they present them at assembly. And we normally, we discourage them from reproducing other writers' works. They have to create their own because we do not tolerate plagiarism.
And is this all the grades that prepare at
All
assembly?
the grades, they
Wow.
interchange. Every week is for a particular grade. In a year, I mean, if it's for grade 12 this week, the next week it will be for another grade.
Right.
Then we accommodate a maximum of 3 speakers
At a
per
time?
day, per
Oh,
Thursday,
right.
only on Thursdays.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you find that they grow in confidence as they do this from year to year?
They do, but what I learned mostly is that especially the ones that are good are the ones that keep coming, because the audience's response it somehow boosts their confidence. So you find that you have a repetition of the same people.
And do they get help from each other in preparing those speeches?
A lot. At times there are people who are good writers yet they cannot speak. You'd find that a good speaker would come and present a speech, and later after the speech or even before acknowledge that this speech was written by this learner.
And what about feedback from the learners? Do you find that they comment on each other, and does that help, or does it like demoralize them if they say you were useless?
They normally do not comment at the assembly. They would their gestures would just say a lot, but they normally we discourage them from
Being
pulling
nasty.
them down. Yes. Most of the time it would just be you'd hear from their responses that this is something they approve of, or this is something that they really do not believe in.
What sort of topics do they write about for these speeches?
Mostly minimal politics, but mostly it's about celebrities, and also etiquette. There's a lot they talk about.
Etiquette?
And mostly because it's a girls only school,
yeah.
it's about dating and all that stuff.
So they're giving each other advice?
They're giving each other tips and advice. They do.
That's actually so sweet. But it's wonderful to have you can assess an oral without even being in the classroom.
Yes, you can.
Because it's a real life
A lot.
situation.
A
And
lot.
that is a fabulous idea. And then within the classroom itself, do you do other oral lessons?
Yes, during classes, most of the time, because from grade 10, due to the NCS syllabus, most of the time they're the ones talking. And earlier, I disliked this idea of the NCS approach at first. But when I introduced it to the learners, I found that the learners were more at ease with it, because they did not. We tend to like the sound of our own voices. We forget about them. So we learned later that they are not really empty. They even know better than we do. Yes.
Yeah. So you're finding real value in the new curriculum.
A lot. Even though it's a bit difficult at times, but we get in there.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you for coming to join us today and
Thank you so
being
much.
with us. And I'm sure you will now be inspired, as well as inspiring other people to create more brilliant lessons.
I am.
That's very nice. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us.